Good evening. Will the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs please come to order? I would like to inform the committee that under our Rule 84.2, the following membership substitution has been made for this committee effective immediately. Mr. Redhead for Emily Malloway. Before the committee can proceed with the business before it, it must elect a chairperson. Are there any nominations? Honourable Mr. Simard.
I nominate Emily Oxenham.
Mr. Oxenham has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, Mr. Oxenham, will you please take the chair?
Okay, our next item of business is the election of a vice chairperson. Are there any nominations? Minister.
Nominate Emily Redhead.
Emily Redhead has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, Emily Redhead is elected vice chairperson. This meeting has been called to considering the following bills. Bill 33, the Planning Amendment and City of Winnipeg Charter Amendment Act. Bill 41, the Promoting Inclusion in Amateur Sport Act. Bill 43, the Highway Traffic Amendment and Drivers and Vehicles Amendment Act. I would like to inform all in attendance of the provisions in our rules regarding hour of adjournment. A standing committee meeting to consider a bill must not sit past midnight to hear public presentations or to consider clause by clause of a bill except for by unanimous consent of the committee. I would also like to inform all members of the public in the gallery of the rules of decorum for standing committees. Please note that any participation from the gallery is not allowed. Examples of specific actions that are not allowed include clapping, cheering, or interrupting presentations. Taking photos or videos of the meeting is also not allowed. And please set your phones to mute. I thank everyone in advance for their cooperation. Prior to proceeding with public presentations, I would like to advise members of the public regarding the process for speaking in a committee. In accordance with our rules, a time limit of 10 minutes has been allotted for presentations with another 5 minutes allowed for questions from committee members. Questions shall not exceed 45 seconds in length with no time limit for answers. Questions may be addressed to presenters in the following rotation. First, the minister sponsoring the bill, or another member of their caucus. Second, a member of the official opposition. And third, an independent member. If a presenter is not in attendance when their name is called, they will be dropped to the bottom of the list. If the presenter is not in attendance when their name is called a second time, they will be removed from the presenter's list. The proceedings of our meeting are recorded in order to provide a verbatim transcript. Each time someone wishes to speak, whether it be an MLA or a presenter, I first have to say the person's name. This is a signal for Hansard recorder to turn the mics on and off. When written submissions from the following persons have been received and distributed to committee members: Denise Volkov, Association of Manitoba Municipalities on Bill 33, Lanny McInnes, Urban Development Institute of Manitoba on Bill 33, Denise Volkov, Association of Manitoba Municipalities on Bill 43. Does the committee agree to have these documents appear in the Hansard transcript of this meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Okay, we are starting on bill number 33, and I will now call on David Grant, the organization Fort Richmond University Heights Neighborhood Association. Mr. David Grant. Okay, Mr. Grant, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. As usual, I have nothing to hand out. and I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak tonight. Bill 33 strengthens the functions of the municipal board. Some actions become mandatory. This is good. The bill fails to deal with what could be city arrogance at times. When a city chooses to ignore the ruling of the municipal board, I don't see that situation being fixed by Bill 33. The whole concept of planning water supplies, this is a new topic, but the whole concept of planning water supplies and sewage services across the region is a very good thing. That's been hampering municipalities for a long time, and that we would have regional planning, the capital planning region, I think it's now called. I think it was set up many years ago just to plan water and sewer services because planned properly, these can be affordable for a small town. And you don't run out of capacity, as sometimes happens here in Winnipeg. So the more recent concept of capital planning, where the city is given a veto over what would normally be a municipality's decision on whether to build some more houses for its residents, giving the city power to say no to a community is unusual, I would say. I don't think we've seen that in the past. And it goes way beyond making sure every town has enough water and sewage capacity. So, but this idea of the city forcing its ideas on these regional places seems very wrong. Don't want to use a forbidden term, but it seems like a globalist power grab, because it's not that the city has said we don't want the small towns to grow, it's that they only want apartment towers. And if you live in a small town in Manitoba, the reason somebody might move there to retire is not to live in a box, because we got beautiful boxes in Winnipeg for people to live in. It's because they want a backyard. And quite often backyards in Winnipeg are hard to find and sometimes overpriced. The amount my house is supposed to be worth is 5 times what I paid for it a few years ago, and it doesn't matter to me because I'm not selling, but it does seem that affordability of single-family homes is being affected by the CPR. Now, Bill 33 doesn't deal specifically with the capital planning region, but it is on the same topic. And so that's one of my concerns, is that it doesn't seem just or fair for the city to prevent a town from offering housing, developing. When in this case, the politicians in Ottawa have used our federal tax dollars to affect the development in cities across the country. So that's something that's, as I say, 33 doesn't deal with that, but it is an ongoing problem, I think, and that has led to a whole lot of apartment towers in Winnipeg. And I think some of the municipalities have decided that they want to have control over what they do, and they've dropped out of the CPR, so it's good that they're allowed to do that. On the topic of unreasonable delay, I think that's one of the elements of 33. It's an ongoing problem. It turns out that's one of the most powerful tools that a non-cooperative bureaucrat can apply, because not getting your permit to build sort of puts the project on hold. You've arranged your money and now you can't build because the final permit is not, hey, you got to cross this T here. It's that it's not going to be allowed without a reason. So I think that's a very bad thing, and it should be dealt with in Bill 33, that we should have unreasonable delay in approval of projects should be dealt with. Not necessarily forbidden, but at least a mechanism for dealing with them. Again, that's something that a developer, if he's facing a year of inactivity for what could have been done in a day, going to the municipal board might be a solution for that. I don't think it is at the moment. Also, the unreasonable delay can, and has in other places, been a mechanism for demanding unlawful payments. Over the centuries, corrupt practice has been very hard to stamp out. And anytime we can, with adding a sentence to a law, anytime we can take away a mechanism that's been used elsewhere for corrupt practice, I think that's a really good thing. On the last point, there are reasons that the Act limits the power of City Council. Too often the city tries to take action that tramples on what citizens believe are their rights and businesses. Most of us are glad that the finance ministers and others in this government have been very successful in resisting city demands for money and power. And I ask that no expansion of powers in this area be granted. And that's my comments for tonight on 33. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? We'll go to Minister Simard.
Thank you, Mr. Grant, for your presentation. I know that you referenced the capital planning region quite a bit, but Bill 33 doesn't involve that at all. One of the things that we're really excited about with this bill is that it puts trust and local levels of mature government, and the municipal board's scope is not to relitigate what a mature level of government have done. What are your feelings on that topic?
Sorry, Mr. Grant.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I hadn't thought much about that until a year or two ago when the city chose unusual locations for where the next apartment tower should be. And they wanted to put it, I don't curl, but they put it on a parking lot for a curling rink. There are lots of other downtown parking lots, gravel lots that aren't in use. It could have been placed there and not fallen over when the riverbanky roads. But so when the city decided to ignore the business case made by the curling club, the municipal board heard the matter, and that was a good thing. They decided that when the city had said, we're going to build it there, but we'll consult. And the municipal board said, no, you will come to an agreement acceptable to the current tenant before you start building, which seemed reasonable, that if the city is going to make arrangements for parking somewhere, that be a condition of building. So the municipal board made a reasonable decision on that matter, and the city came out at their next meeting and said, we've talked to our lawyers, and they say we can just ignore the municipal board. I thought that's bordering on arrogance, and we need a municipal board, if it's going to make a good decision, to have the power to prevent the city, not just this city, but from a municipality from just ignoring them. And I believe this bill makes the actions of the MB a little more emphatic. But that's my thought on that matter. And I acknowledge the CPR has nothing to do with Bill 33, but Bill 33 touches on some of those things. And so if I'd been talking to you a month ago, we could have added some good stuff to Bill 33. And that's the reason I mentioned those things. As an inspiration, maybe you'll do something like that in the future. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I'm going to ask the members of the official opposition if they have any questions for the presenter. MLA King.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank you, Mr. Grant, for your comments tonight. I know opposition kind of will support this. I know being part of municipal government for a number of years myself, and being on the AMM board, it's something that municipal officials have been asking for years, is a little bit of their own autonomy to move forward to get around some of the bureaucracy. So those are my comments, but thank you for yours, and thanks for coming in tonight.
Mr. Grant?
Nothing to add, but yes, I'm aware that there are some municipalities who are very concerned with having a degree of autonomy where it doesn't hurt anybody else. And I think that's been the case, that when they've wanted that next step or they don't want a power taken away from them, it's where it doesn't hurt anybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, I will now call on Mr. Corey Rybuck from the Manitoba Egg Farmers. Welcome, Mr. Rybuck. Please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. As mentioned, my name is Corey Rybuck. I'm the General Manager of Manitoba Egg Farmers, which I'll refer to as MEF going forward. MEF represents 174 regulated egg and pullet farmers in the province. Our farmers produced 82.2 million dozens last year, which represents about 8.5% of national volume. I'm here today to express MEF's appreciation and support for the proposed amendments under Bill 33, which for supply managed livestock commodities, poultry and dairy, in the Livestock Technical Review Committee context will streamline approvals, reduce unnecessary provincial reviews, and provide greater certainty while maintaining environmental and land use protections. We see these amendments as targeted refinements, not a fundamental redesign of the TRC process. The 15% animal unit increase to legally existing supply managed livestock operations without a new conditional use approval or a new livestock technical review is significant. Manitoba's laying hen quota currently stands at just over 3 million hens, which is an increase of 36.5% since the year 2000. We're very fortunate to be experiencing annual growth, so this 15% increase provision recognizes this limited incremental growth year over year in our sector. Allowing updates to structures and operations by amending existing conditional use orders is also logical, provided there's no increase in animal units and no change in the livestock category. Triggering another provincial technical review is unnecessary. And for context, 300 animal units in a laying context represents about 36,000 hens and 180,000 pullets. In Manitoba, the average layer farm is about 17,000 hens, so below that 300 animal unit threshold. MEF also appreciates the proposed mandatory municipal board appeal timelines, as those will provide clarity not only to producers, but all stakeholders as well. Thanks again for the opportunity to present on behalf of Manitoba's regulated egg and pullet farmers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rybuck. We'll turn it over to questions from the committee. We'll start with Minister Simard.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Mr. Rybuck. I appreciate you pointing out the benefits of the amendments and how they impact the supply managed industries. I think it's a step in the right direction, and happy to have your support. So thank you for coming to speak to us today and voicing that support.
Mr. Rybuck.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
Okay, member from the opposite, Mr. King.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rybuck, for coming in and showing your comments of support for as well. I know anybody who goes through that permitting process, the TRC, it's kind of been frustrating. So if this helps in that process somewhat, I'm sure it's going to be welcomed legislation to operations like you're dealing with. So thanks for your comments.
Mr. Rybuck.
Yes, we certainly agree and appreciate those proposed amendments as well.
Okay, well, seeing no further questions, I would just like to thank you for your presentation. Okay, we will move on to the next presenter, Mr. Tim Comack, a private citizen. Welcome, Mr. Comack. Please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Chair, ministers, members of the committee. Appreciate your time today. I just want to start out by congratulating everybody for getting to this step. I'm going to read something that I presented. I didn't have time to memorize it, so I hope you can understand, busy part of the season. I'll also let you know kind of some background as to who I am. Not something I like to do, but I think it helps give you some context. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to our input this evening. It's important. My name is Tim Comack. I'm an executive of Waterside Development. We're one of the largest land development companies in the province. And for the past 17 years prior, I was an executive at one of the larger home building, apartment building, and land development businesses that developed land outside the city as well. So I've got some good context and understanding of the two different frameworks you're speaking about today. On top of that, I sit on numerous different committees. I'm a director at UDI. I'm on the Land Development Advisory for the province, for the city. I chair the Infill Committee. Hopefully that gives you enough background to give you some understanding that I'm involved in the business. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'd like to think that between myself and my brother, we've developed thousands and thousands of housing units over the last 20 some odd years. So we understand start to finish. I want to first acknowledge the work that this government's put into this bill. I know how much work it's been. I've been involved in that work, and I've seen a lot of the different behind-the-scenes things that happen to make all this work, the stakeholder engagement, et cetera. And it's important to acknowledge that because you're not here through some sort of quick and easy process. It's been long, arduous, and challenging, and a lot of hard work has gone into it. The impacts of this bill, when supported at the municipal board level, will be meaningful. And I want to ensure that government understands that the investment at the municipal board level in order to make these changes impactful is also needed. It doesn't end today. This is kind of a second step in this process. The first step kind of started with another government. This government inherited it. But I think industry-wide and even government-wide, it's widely acknowledged that the municipal board needs additional full-time equivalent staff and financial investment in order to make this work really well. There's big delays there right now when files get referred over to there, and very often the timelines that are described in these rules, legislation, it's very hard for them to achieve it. And so they need some help, and I'm here to kind of ask government to consider that side of the fence when you're looking down and making budgetary decisions. Our entire industry would also agree that we're at a critical stage in the housing cycle where we have a very, very limited supply of land. And I think that's something that ties into this whole conversation. You can make as many legislative changes as we want, but if we don't address the other issues, we continue to have the same problems. We also have a deeply constrained infrastructure capacity that needs investment and reinvestment all over Winnipeg and the capital region, whether it's combined sewers, lagoons, wastewater treatment plants, water treatment plants, it's everywhere. I can point down at the city of Winnipeg and tell you where all the places are that you would love to build and develop, but there's no services or no available services. I can also do the same in Headingley, where they're at a wastewater treatment capacity virtual moratorium, in LaSalle, where the lagoon needs to be expanded, in Springfield, where they need water, in East St. Paul, where we had to, as a company, create an alternative solution for servicing by bringing services through a joint infrastructure committee from St. Clements. So that's a real issue, and it's preventing thousands and thousands of housing units from being developed as we speak on readily developable land inside development plans that are ready to be developed, but infrastructure is the issue. Our company leads and sometimes puts our money where our mouth is, but in many cases it's requiring government level funding because of the dollar amounts. So with that said, you have to tie this all together. It can't just be one isolated effort, and I've watched this government in action, and I know this government listens. In fact, I'd argue from what I've seen in the last 20 years, this is one of the best governments at listening, and so we appreciate that. We've had a great experience with this government. I think if you did proceed with this and tie it into various other initiatives that I've mentioned, that you'd be able to actually make a meaningful impact on the housing supply in our province, which would help deal with the affordability crisis that we're in right now. And I think that's very important. We are at a point where not only do we have a limited supply of land available to us, at like a crisis state at the city of Winnipeg, nearing that state in the municipalities around Winnipeg, but if we addressed it, we could resolve it. So with that said, when we tie this all together and deal with these issues collaboratively, collectively, and across multiple different channels, I think we can make a meaningful impact. I do think that this government needs to consider stepping in for major infrastructure investments. I know it has been, and so I'm not saying it hasn't been, but I do think this government needs to really look at how they can, polish this with some additional major government level investment in infrastructure. And I'm sure all the municipalities are calling, and I'm sure you have a long list, and I think it's a challenging task. I'm not trying to belittle that demand. But with these first steps, I applaud you, because that's the first step towards getting all of this right. And it's a long-term approach that has to be taken. I want to acknowledge the robust stakeholder engagement process that was undertaken to review and analyze these development application and approval processes. We've been involved in this for many, many years. A lot of hours have gone into it, not just from the development industry, but tons of other stakeholders who deserve like a big pat on the back. The problem is that we're sitting here trying to deal with something that is a little outdated and antiquated. You know, I make the joke that we're taking a Model T and we're trying to turn it into a Lamborghini, and it's not exactly easy. These rules, these legislative processes started and were created, you know, 100 years ago, right? And we're now trying to slowly get them right. And I understand how hard that is. You can't change it all at once. That'll shock the system. But we have to keep working on it. And that's my point when I speak to that, is that we're making some good steps right now, and I applaud them, but we have to continue to take steps to work on these processes, policies, procedures, and the regulation and all the other things that follow to make sure that we continue to get it right. I do want to state that these implementations make a lot of sense. So our industry has sat down and looked at the proposals that went forward from BRAID and then resulted in what was proposed and then put together by government. And I want to state that industry and private business owners like ourselves look at them and understand why these steps are the steps that are being taken, and they make sense. So we support them. I do want to caution again that this can't be considered a final step in what will hopefully be the ever-evolving continuous improvement to these outdated processes. You know, it's not easy to do, and I get it. It's not going to happen overnight. The system was built over many eras, as I've mentioned, and these tweaks make the right improvements to that system considering what we're working with. So I want to reinforce that. I know a lot of people might be asking for more or wider berth, et cetera, but the way this is being done is actually being done quite intelligently, in my opinion. But I do want to address something. It's a bit of an elephant in the room, and I think we all know about it. One thing that we haven't thought about through all this, or if we have thought about it, I don't think anyone knows the easy solution, but we have to deal with the digital world that we live in and the impacts that this digital world is having on the development application, development process, and the development approval systems that we're in. It's a huge impact. And so I'm hoping that over time, as some next steps and continuous improvement, stakeholders, engagement groups, et cetera, people like myself that are willing to volunteer their hours, that we can really start to dive into how to answer this new ever-evolving and in some cases problematic, but also there's opportunities. The digital world, the digital component to all this. And I mentioned Facebook. I'll mention all types of other means to get the message out and to collaborate, other ways that we can hold hearings, et cetera. There's a lot of potential opportunity to improve what we're doing, thinking digitally. So with that said, these steps deserve applause, and I want to be the first to say thank you and acknowledge the difficult challenges ahead. I also want to make a very, very concerted point of addressing the praise that's needed for the people behind the scenes at government that go to work every day, get assigned these tasks, these jobs, these duties, oversee these processes, and the amount of work and probably pressure that they've been under to get all of this done. I want to be one of the people that gets up here and make sure that we recognize that effort. It's huge. I'm involved in a lot of collaborative processes through a lot of different stakeholder engagements through various types of government. I would suggest that the province of Manitoba, you know, the administrators, the bureaucrats, it was a best-in-class process in my opinion, gold standard. So with that said, we're appreciative of what's been done. I want to flag and we'll come back to speaking to you about the municipal board investment that we're asking for you to consider, some additional staff to support them, some funding to support them.
Thank you, Mr. Comack. Unfortunately, your time has expired. We will, if it's okay, we'll move on to maybe some questions from the committee, and if you could work your answer in there, would that be okay? Awesome. Okay, so we'll start with some questions from the committee. We'll go with Minister Simard.
First of all, thank you for pointing out the heavy lifting that was done by the government staff in making this a reality through the consultation process, the implementation of those recommendations. Thank you very much for that. Your point on making investments to support the municipal board to be able to put these changes into immediate action are appreciated and noted. I've also taken note of your ask for increased infrastructure investment. As you know, we've been very engaged in building up that infrastructure investment and hope to make sure that they align with the processes. And finally, I guess my question to you is, what else do you need to finish your presentation?
Minister's time has expired. We'll go with Mr. Comac.
I just wanted to say that this process has had government's full attention. I hope it continues to get government's full attention. And I wanted to thank government and everybody involved in everything they've done to this point to get us here. And I wanted to offer my willingness to continue to help this government succeed in these initiatives. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Comac, for your comments. And I have to say, thanks for your input. It sounds like you were involved in the process. Some very valuable input that you've shared with us just tonight. I mean, I've been writing everything down, and the main points that you brought forward here, and the actions that need to be taken. Yeah, everything's good in words, but we need action, and that's our job, is to make sure that government follows through with that. And again, I fully support this this type of legislation for municipalities, so I can assure you that we'll do what we can to see that there's action on it. Development readiness is something that really needs to...
Your time's
Could be.
expired. Mr. Comac?
Sorry, was there a question? No? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to Bill number 41, the Promoting Inclusion in Amateur Sport Act. Okay. Okay, we are going to call our first presenter. We have one presenter for this bill. I will call Dr. Glenn Winthrop to the podium. Welcome, Mr. Winthrop. You may proceed with your presentation.
Sure. Basically, what I normally would just submit a written submission about my safe sport concerns for marginalized youth in this province regarding this Bill 41. With such an extent, I felt it necessary to come down here to express my concerns. So basically what's being passed out is sort of the information written submission I would have just provided. I'm not going to read 5 pages of information note word for word. I'm just going to kind of touch upon some of the key things, and you can ask me questions afterwards. So I'm Glenn Winthrop. I have an MPA, Master of Public Administration degree from the University of Manitoba. For my thesis work, I did a policy research, one of the first safe sport policy research projects in Canada. For this project, I garnered the support of Sport Manitoba and went and met with every PSO in the province to secure athlete lists that I can send a mail-out survey to. I had chosen to do a mail-out survey because I wanted to ensure that participants could feel comfortable that they would be anonymous when providing responses. As a consequence, I received over a 30% response rate for my surveys. Again, this was a mailed-out survey, which is quite high. From that work, I was invited by Dame Celia Breckenridge, the pioneer in sexual harassment abuse in sport, to be a PhD student with her in England. For her, I continued to do policy research on safe sport, the first policy research project in the UK, where I traveled the UK and met with various athletes, coaches, administrators, and academics. Part of my work with Celia was to assist her with her safe sport projects with British national sport organizations, UNICEF, and the IOC. For the IOC Consensus Statement on Sexual Harassment, Abuse, and Sport, my policy work was utilized in that document that now serves a basis globally for safe sport policy in all countries. After my PhD, I went and was employed as an assistant professor in the United States, where I taught ethics, sport policy and law. And after leaving the United States due to certain administrative changes down there, I took appointment with the BC Ministry of Public Safety as a policy analyst that wrote legislation. Regarding Bill 41, I commend the government for wanting to make sport more inclusive, wanting to make sport be a much more positive experience, a much more safer experience for more participants, regardless of their marginalization status. Typically in the past, my research has found that people who are from the BIPOC community, the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, are often targeted for harassment and abuse, bullying, as well as sexual assault. So I commend the government wanting to do more, wanting to make sport more safe. However, I have issues with this bill. I find it vague, short-sighted. It increases the risk of harm to participants in organizations that you just will be prescribed as PSOs. And ultimately, I think it fails to meet the spirit of the Protecting Youth in Sports Act, which seeks for athletes 21 years of age and under to have a safe and positive experience in sport programs delivered by prescribed PSOs. Now, I'm not against measuring policies and legislation. In fact, I'm for it. We need to measure policies and legislation to see if they are effective, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. However, in the context of what we are living in right now, we have conservative governments at the federal and provincial levels who are anti-trans. They have passed anti-trans legislation in Alberta. The federal conservative leader supports that. In BC, in the last election there a couple years ago, the Conservative Party ran an anti-SOGI, or sexual orientation and gender identity platform, and they almost won. There are MLAs that were elected from the Conservative Party in BC who are clearly anti-Indigenous, anti-gay, and anti-trans, and they're very public about it. We know in the past that when people are forced to or voluntarily self-identify, that it comes back and can be used against them to harm them. This bill is requiring athletes or participants to self-identify, whether they want to or not, to a PSO. I have concerns about that. Recently, in the Winnipeg Free Press, there was an article titled, "Alleges Wrongful Dismissal, Harassment, Discrimination, Ex-Director of Lacrosse Association Files Lawsuit." This article went on to describe the alleged work experience of an employee at that organization that was supervised, employed by volunteer board. To date, I have not seen anything from Sport Manitoba or the government of Manitoba that expresses or gives assurances to the public that this is not a widespread issue in sport organizations, that volunteer board members are not mistreating staff. And my contention is, if staff at PSOs are not safe, are not provided the resources, then we can't expect them to provide a safe environment for participants. It greatly disturbs me that the government wants to have PSOs run by volunteer boards who we don't have assurances of the quality of these board members to collect data on the marginalization of and collect personal information from participants with no safeguards or guarantees that this information will not be utilized in some way against those participants in the immediate time frame or in the future. Many participants in sport go on to apply for volunteer and employment opportunities as coaches, officials, administrators. There is no guarantee that the information they provide as an athlete will not be used against them when applying for those positions. Nor is there anything in this bill that says that the PSO or the Government of Manitoba or Sport Manitoba will not share that information with other jurisdictions, other governments and other jurisdictions. There's nothing in there stating that an athlete, a trans athlete who identifies as trans, as required by this law, that their information will not be supplied to an organization in Alberta where they're prohibited from participating. Again, I have great concerns of people providing, especially youth, who may not be the ones providing the information. It could be their parents or guardians, giving personal information that is not essential for participation in sport to an organization with no safeguards on how that information is going to be protected or used.
Dr. Winthrop, my apologies, your time has expired for your presentation. I just want to thank you very much for everything you shared today. We're going to open it up to questions from the committee. We'll begin with Minister Kennedy.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming in person, because you had said usually you would submit a written submission, but I appreciate you coming in person to share your thoughts and share your concerns about this bill. What I would say is that, I want to assure you that the information that will be collected is certainly voluntary. We will not be forcing anyone to provide any information that they don't want to provide about themselves. It's really, this legislation is about identifying the gaps in who is and isn't participating in sport, and how we can help PSOs, provincial sporting organizations, to increase participation. What I can say is that the information that is gathered will be shared with Sport Manitoba. They're the only people who will be receiving that information.
Your time has expired, Minister. Thank you. Question from the opposition. Mr. Oh, absolutely, my bad. You can respond, Dr. Winthrop. Thank you.
The legislation, the bill explicitly states that PSOs will be mandated to collect this information. They, in turn, will make it a requirement to collect that information for participants that register with them to meet your mandate. There is nothing in that bill that says that any group will be excluded or anything will be voluntary, or there's a voluntary nature of any kind.
Thank you. Mr. Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Winthrop, thank you very much for coming and as usual, demonstrating your democratic right here in the great province of Manitoba to be able to come to committee and share. I'm going to ask the committee if we can ask for leave to give you an additional 2 minutes to wrap up your presentation. Do you think 2 minutes would do it?
Mr. Winthrop.
My recommendation, instead of including the PSOs to collect data, that we bypass them, and either Sport Manitoba or the Government of Manitoba does an online survey that the general public can willingly voluntarily participate in to collect data of quantitative and qualitative nature so that not only do we get numbers of how many underrepresented individuals are in sport, whether they're participating with a PSO or not, but their experiences, as well as any potential barriers that whether they be real or perceived by individuals as a means for data collection, and bypass the PSOs completely. And I feel more secure for the government of Manitoba with collecting information for the government of Manitoba rather going through voluntary boards, sport boards.
Thank you, Dr. Winthrop. There has been a request. Okay, just want to clarify, are you finished with that portion of your presentation? Okay. So we have a leave request for 2 minutes?
Let's ask if there are any more questions.
Okay, are there any more questions from the committee? Mr. Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Winthrop, thank you for your presentation. I'm basically just going to thank you for your presentation. Thanks for the information. Thanks for the detailed notes as well. And, you know, as the minister has mentioned, it sounds like she's doing some listening, and that's good to hear. And again, thank you for attending this evening and very valuable information provided. Thank you. And thank you for what you've done, not only in Manitoba, Canada, but also across the seas and across the states as well. So thank you.
Dr. Winthrop, would you like to respond?
Thank you very much for the kind words. Again, I really just came in because of the grave concerns I had with not so much of the attention behind the bill, but the measurements mechanism that's going to be utilized to determine the effectiveness of that bill.
Okay. Unfortunately, time is about to expire. However, we have had a leave request for an additional 2 minutes for you to wrap up. Is there leave for an additional 2 minutes for Q&A from the committee? Agreed? Okay, agreed. So 2 minutes is yours. Mr. Winthrop.
Well, I wasn't expecting any additional time. I again will just like to say I like to commend what the government has done over the last few years in terms of safe sport, in terms of passing the Protecting Youth and Sport Act, as well as the intentions behind what they want to do with this bill in terms of making it safer for marginalized people from the BIPOC into us LGBTQI community, as well as other marginalized people. I think it's great. My concern is really with the mechanism to evaluate it. In terms of going through the PSO Sport Manitoba, and really I would, would agree with the leader of the opposition where we have PSO staff that are overworked, and I'm concerned about the burden that they will have doing this, as well as just the safety of the personal information that's given to them to volunteers, and volunteers not being able to access that information and weaponizing it for their own self-interest.
Minister Kennedy.
I got cut off in my last answer, and I just wanted to say that I really do appreciate you coming in. I appreciate all the points that you've made, and want to thank you for all of your work in this field. It's obvious that you are very passionate about this, and it's your life's work, so I really do appreciate you coming down and sharing your concerns and your feedback regarding the bill. Thank you.
Dr. Winthrop.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation. Appreciate the time. And we have concluded Bill 41. We are now moving to Bill 43, the Highway Traffic Amendment and Drivers and Vehicles Amendment Act. We will be calling our first presenter. I'll call upon David Grant, please. Hello, Mr. Grant. Please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. This bill has a lot of stuff in it. And so I was glad to be able to read it through. It sets out some definitions, and it requires some riders to wear the riders of e-bikes, or more correctly, battery-powered motorcycles, to wear helmets. It forbids their use on roads over 50 kilometers an hour. With the speeds they're limited to, this is a very good thing, and it'll make us all safer. The bill is silent on the monstrous danger to lawbreakers on lightweight bikes and battery bikes. Considering the actual risks to a person commuting on a bicycle versus on a small motorbike or a car, on narrow roads, the car and the motorcycle are passed less than once an hour. The bicycle may be passed 100 times an hour on a two-lane road. This presents danger. Each time that the bicycle is passed, even though there's a 1 meter rule, it still puts the rider in mortal danger if they wobble or take a spill. Operating a bicycle on a road with a center line, in my opinion, should require a helmet and heavy gloves. This would be an easy way of bringing in a helmet rule. I know we've talked about that over the years, and right now people can still ride bicycles without helmets. On the other hand, when I was young and doing this stuff foolishly, the rules were even looser, and but I think that would be, if this would be the bill to put it in, if there's time to put that in, requiring a helmet not just on electric bikes, but also on any bike on a road with a center line, because that implies busier roads. The helmet is one thing, heavy gloves are another. I've been falling off bikes for more than 70 years. I try to keep off the pavement, but it does happen, especially for teens and young folks. Jeans and long sleeves and gloves are essential in avoiding medical care afterwards. It's okay if you have a jacket or jeans that have a bit of a rip and you don't have any blood coming out. That's a good crash. I've been a safety officer at many competitive bike events. Most of these events require PPE, personal protective equipment, and that goes far beyond a helmet. Ill-dressed cyclists cost Manitoba Health a lot of time and money. The public interest would be served if this bill required PPE for everybody on a bike on, as I say, divided roads and up. MPI rules are largely set here in the legislature. Note that one of the Justice Minister's laws recently forbade MPI from basing premiums on the risk of the main driver. That would seem to be an insurance matter, but the Cabinet felt that was a good idea, and they made the change. And we have to support what's done here. If government truly seeks to protect Manitobans, it should require every vehicle operator on busy roads to be licensed and identified with a plate and plate or fabric vest. You should require every operator of a battery bike to pass a safety course like the fine ones offered by Safety Services Manitoba. They train every motorcyclist in the province to ride safely and to watch out for stuff they might not think of. And I would think an e-bike, even if it's only going 30 kilometers an hour, can run into some of the same dangers. So I noticed that in Section 183, Bill 43 forbids towing a trailer behind a trike. And it seems logical until you think about it. Every adult trike is more stable than any bicycle. My wife rides both in our community. And I was wondering why, I don't understand why the prohibition is only for trailers on trikes. This seems like bias because the bicycle is more unstable than a trike. A bicycle going through a turn, when the trailer tugs a little bit, is a more unstable thing than with a trike. So I would suggest that instead of prohibiting one and not the other, it would be more appropriate to set a maximum trailer limit for a bicycle or a trike. So if we say 80 pounds, because that counts a little kid in a 10-pound trailer, but setting a maximum weight for a trailer would be in a direction of increasing safety And I think that current rule is wrong. Anyway, Section 187 is right to require helmets on trikes, because when a bicycle tips, it's like a person falling over, catching themselves with their hands. It's benign generally if you're wearing gloves. But the trike, when it tips, you're falling farther. And so I would say that if you're going to start off with helmets, trikes are a good place to start. But again, I don't see any problem with a bicycle on Pembina or any other major street requiring the rider to wear some PPE. And so that was that one. I guess the other is, again, as I said earlier, why are we not requiring helmets on bikes on any street? We could begin with the ones over 50 kilometers. And because in spite of the city wanting to make any road with a bicycle a 30-kilometer road, we still do have a lot of them that are 60 and 70. And I had a friend who spent all his Sundays for years doing laps of the perimeter, 12 hours of the perimeter highway on a bicycle. I think he was nuts, but he liked bicycling, and it was good exercise. And because the shoulder there is 8 feet or 10 feet wide, he was reasonably safe. But anyway, that's my thought on that one, that the purpose of this is to prevent injury, crippling injury, and so on. Anyway, I think there would be a net improvement on that. I think that's the reason we made requirements and offered every motorcycle operated on in the province has to have injury insurance. And that's to make sure that when they crash, because it's not if, when they crash, the medical expenses will be covered by the insurance group. And I would say the same could apply to battery bicycles, that every time they crash should be covered by their insurance. And anyway, the other matter is that e-motorcycles are not, battery bikes are not required to carry a number plate. The bicycle plates we used to have when we were little had tiny font. You could barely read them if you were standing beside the bike. On the other hand, can you imagine our streets if gas-powered motorcycles were not required to carry a number plate? Most of us would ride safely. The crazy ones would be even crazier. And so I think the need, now that we're dealing with and permitting battery-powered bicycles on the street, the need for insurance and licensing, putting a number plate on it is big. And the training idea, the idea of training them, because if you can't operate a 40-kilometer motorcycle without taking the course, why can you operate a 32-kilometer battery bicycle without taking that course? So I think the precedent has been set. And again, these are enhancements to that, to the current law. The other one is number plates. The competitive bicycle events, just like skiing, people wear a vest, double-sided, very big number, 4-digit number, and that defines who's doing that. So from a distance, anybody can see, if it's a photographer getting too close to danger, we can see who it was. And I would say the same would apply for bicyclists. If somebody blows through a camera light on a bicycle, nothing can be done now, but if we saw their 5-digit number in the camera, that person could be dealt with, reminded to not do that. So that's just applying a technology. As I say, it's been used for decades in competitive skiing and bicycle events. And it would be very easy to bring it in here. And again, for roads that have a line down the middle, it would be an easy place to start. We don't want to mess with the kid and the parent riding on their back street. That's something that really doesn't apply. But again, that's my thought, and I'm glad this bill is there. And it'd be nice if it had a few enhancements. But again, that's commonly what I come up to say. So again, I thank you for your time, and I would hope the minister will take this stuff into account next time.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Mr. Grant. We'll turn it over to the minister for questions. Minister Naylor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grant, for your presentation today. What I heard some support for some changes in this bill, and also that you are identifying additional changes that we might consider for amendments to the Highway Traffic Act in the future. So I've made note of those. And I also just wanted to, trying to put this in a question form, I wanted to provide a clarification and just ask what your thoughts are on that. You had identified concern, if I heard you correctly, about a three-wheel trike, like a bicycle trike, and interpreting that as not being allowed to haul like a trailer, right? So I just want to clarify that the changes in this bill include the three-wheel vehicle that's being...
Minister's time has expired.
My time is up.
Mr. Grant.
On the topic of three-wheel vehicles, my understanding, reading that, because there were no other definitions, is that my wife's three-wheeled bicycle, which has 26-inch wheels on it and only one seat, that would be forbidden from calling a trailer. We've never thought of it. It's got a little grocery basket on it. But I would think that a family where the mother has the trike, the bicycle trike, and wants to haul the kid, the 2-year-old in the trailer, that my reading of the act, the bill, is that would be forbidden. If it's not, great. But on the other hand, I have worried for a long time about people taking a 1-year-old on the back of a bicycle because we know they fall over. Bikes crash. I've got scars. And I never considered that. My kids didn't go, they putted around the driveway, and then when they were able to go on ride a bicycle on their own, we took them out on back roads. But I would never have considered hauling a 2-year-old on a trailer down Regent or something. So again, I'm old-fashioned, but that's why if you're going to prohibit trailers, that's what I would hope the direction you'd go. And again, if I've misinterpreted the law, fine. If in your rebuttal you're allowed to say that I was wrong in interpreting it that way, that'd be nice.
Wait, my turn. Mr. Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Grant, once again for, exercising your democratic right. Doesn't matter if the government or opposition brings forward 100 bills, you have the right to come and say what you need to say. I am, as well as you, waiting to hear what the minister has to say in regards to the three-wheel topic that you brought up. So I'm going to pass the floor over to you and then to the minister. I want to hear the rest of her answer.
Mr. Grant.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if that's allowed, I would like to hear that too. Thank you.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for the committee to ask questions of the presenter as opposed to being asked questions. So we're going to turn it over to the minister to ask the next question. So Minister Naylor.
Yeah, so my next question is this. I'm not sure if, Minister Grant, if you had the opportunity to read, there were some definitions set out as part of the changes to this act. So within the context of the definitions, three-wheeled vehicle is referring to a motorized vehicle. So it doesn't refer to like a pedaling, like the adult tricycle that you're referring to. So can you tell me if you feel better about the legislation knowing that?
Mr. Grant.
I would say not. I think if you're going to prohibit a three-wheel electric 500-watt bike versus a 2, I think the three-wheel is inherently more stable. So I would say that if you're going to limit trailers, I think the direction to go in is the weight of them. And if you're going to allow a trailer on any e-bike or bicycle, I would say the three-wheeler is the one that should have the trailer, not the tippy one. Again, my decades of experience. But no, I was aware of that definition, and I think I read it when the bill first came out long ago. But if my wife's trike is not included, I guess I feel better, although she's not hauling a trailer ever. But so that was all. Just the exclusion seemed interesting. So.
All right, Mr. Grant. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you. We will now move on to virtual presentations. We have 2 presenters online. Our first presenter is Mr. Stephen Stairs. Mr. Stairs, if you could turn your camera on, that would be great. Mr. Stairs, if you could hear us, if you could turn your camera on, that would be great. All right, Mr. Stairs, you may proceed with your presentation.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. That was my big concern. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your evening. You know, I know being a legislator is not always a great time, but definitely the public thanks you for these kind of events. So, you know, yay democracy. Some of you may know me from, well, probably committee hearings like this. This is actually a first for me. I'm not going to be talking to you folks about cannabis. So it's a little new for me. So bear with me if I seem a little scatterbrained, but I'm not an expert in e-scooters as I would like to be. A little bit of backstory real quickly is with my vision problems, I've always had to ride a bike or rollerblade or skateboard or something along those lines because I could never pass a driving test. But I have functional vision. That's how I get around. Well, mobility aids like PEVs have been a godsend to me because not only am I allowed to have travel and mobility now, but it takes a little bit of the effort off my chest and heart because, there is a physical limit to how far I can go in a day just pedaling. So PEVs, especially electric scooters, have given me a sense of new freedom and mobility, which has been great. I mean, technology has been, assistive in my life throughout the years, but this has been a great moving step forward regarding my ability to do independent things. A little bit of backstory is I was hit by a car last year, May 2nd, on my e-scooter. Someone ran a stop sign. I was hit. I wouldn't be here today without the safety gear that I had on. So right at the start, I would like to say this bill hits the nail mostly on the head. I mean, the last presenter actually made some good points about cyclists not having to wear helmets, but that's another story. I think mandating helmets for any use on a personal electric vehicle it has to be done. It's like wearing a seatbelt in a vehicle. It's part of responsible ridership. And I think the majority part of people, they would follow those rules. I think some need to be encouraged with things like legislation. But I think overall, from the rider community that I've been experiencing over the past couple of years, there is a sense of well-being and a sense of why would we want to have a negative, image projected to the public when we could just, protect our noggin and have fun. So that notion, great. I think the age restrictions, great. My children are younger, 12 and 15. The 15-year-old has an e-scooter, but doesn't ride it very often. But her friends ride them without helmets and with, no protective gear. And it's shockingly disturbing that their parents don't see a need to make them have helmets or make them have protective gear. So maybe this legislation would encourage them to take that initial proactive step and be like, you know what, law says you have to wear a helmet, so you should probably wear a helmet. Whatever works, right? Whatever protects our children's future regarding the safety aspect, I'm all for. I would like to make a quick point, though. The last presenter actually made a really good point for me by mentioning that, every time a cyclist or someone on a scooter is on the roadway on the side, every time they're passed by a vehicle, they are put in danger. And the more you maximize that danger, the more risk. Well, limiting a speed limit to, let's say, 25 kilometers on a 50-kilometer-hour road, you're going to get past a substantial amount more times than if, say, you were going 40 kilometers an hour, keeping up with the flow of traffic more, not being so much of an obstacle. As a daily I almost said canvas. As a daily scooter user, I am someone who has to have that sense of well-being, especially after the PTSD I have from my accident. I went through physiotherapy, months of injuries. I have chronic arthritis in my shoulder, my hip, and my knee on my right side from the injuries. So I'm always thinking about how I can be protected on the roadway. And one of them is by being able to be a flow of traffic person rather than an obstacle to the roadway. I think there's also another notion. I know this last presentation touched on trailers a lot, which I would really like to clarify something, because I interpreted it myself as a blanket ban on trailers, which I found really, really just confusing, because you can ride a bicycle on the roadway with no speed limit, no mandatory helmet, and can have a trailer pulling behind it with a child in it, and that's fine. But an e-scooter that has a trailer, like my trailer, for example, has working taillights, working turn signals. It has all these things built into it that allow it to be not a hazard on the roadway. If anything, it has flags on it. So it's a visual aid to show other people that there is someone on the roadway with a more distinct, outline of image. So that way they see the flags, they see the person, they see the colors, they see the lights. I'm as visible as possible. And without that trailer, I don't have the ability to do things like go grocery shopping, pick up things from the pharmacy, go on. I have a personal side business that I rely on some of that transportation to bring my electronic gear to things. So it is giving. Last year, I went camping with my scooter by myself with my camping gear and my trailer. It's given me this independence that I don't think a blanket ban really helps. And I think if you're going to categorize these personal electric vehicles into a category of, let's regulate them, let's have safety aspects to them, I think it needs to not just look at the safety aspects of it, because when you do that, and a broad stroke of safety approach ends up limiting people's freedom of mobility, limits their, ability to, purchase new vehicles. But for example, this bill, I know, was built off a pilot project that was created in 2022. Scooter technology has gone through the roof since then. So 500 watts on a limit for your motor, you might want to make that 1,000 because it's much more common. It just there are little nuances that I think could be tweaked to make this legislation really stand up to protect people rather than annoying people. And that's, I know the I said it again. The scooter community is very small in the city, but they are frustrated. And it just happened to be that I'm another loud person in the group, so that's why I'm here. But I think if the government wants to make this bill work, it's super easy. Little tweak here, little tweak there, public safety in mind, but also allowing for people's freedom of mobility. One thing I would like to touch on really quickly that I didn't know about, actually, before I talked to a lawyer friend of mine from the cannabis world, is the constitutionality of this. Now, bear with me, because you probably didn't expect to hear that word on e-scooter legislation. But the gist of it is that if cyclists are not posed with the same regulations as e-scooters, when they're technically, in the eyes of the law, they would be the same type of conveyance, whether or not they're electric powered or not. They're still a two-wheeled vehicle. You push forward, you get from point A to point B. Okay, it's kind of like how a car and a truck are very different, but they're still a motor vehicle. So what would happen is, if you're not penalizing the people who have cyclist rules as the same as you are e-scooter rules, then that becomes an undue persecution of the law, which under Charter 15's, the equal rights protections part, is unfair. So it becomes unconstitutional if you're just posing these rules on e-scooters because they're new, but cyclists can. I could take my kid again down Portage Avenue in a trailer behind me with no turn signals, with no helmet on, as long as I'm on a bicycle, it's fine. So I just think there needs to be continuity across the board. And to finalize, I don't think that giving licenses out to every cycle and e-cycle and personal electric vehicle, I think that's bureaucracy beyond, and I don't think that would help. So if you want to clarify the trailer thing, I would really appreciate it. I'm done.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Stairs. We're going to turn it over to the committee for questions. Minister Naylor.
Hi, Mr. Stairs. Nice to see you again. We've met before, had lots of meetings in the past, but not on this topic, as you identified. So I appreciate your presentation today. I think that you've added some additional context that, you know, I can consider for future amendments to the Highway Traffic Act. And I appreciate you taking the time to come and respond to what you liked and didn't like in the bill as it is now. And I'm really glad that you survived your accident last year. So thanks for being here tonight.
Mr. Stairs, you're welcome to respond.
You almost made me cry. Thank you. Still traumatic for me. So every time someone mentions the fact that I'm still here, it still, you know, makes me think about my kids and stuff. So thank you for acknowledging my participation, and I look forward to conversations in the future regarding this and other things. I mean, I've had a great working relationship with this government so far. I'm pretty pumped.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you to Mr. Stairs for your presentation. As you were speaking there, you raised some really good points, and just in your presentation that you left with us here, you made some good points there, and one of them being the speed limit, and the other being the question about enforcement and practicality. I think those are some good questions as to how, you know, what tools and training that the officers are going to have in order to enforce these rules consistently and fairly. So thank you for raising those points. I would hope that the minister will take them into consideration.
Mr. Stairs, you're welcome to respond.
Thank you again. I don't have a lot of free time in my life outside of my kids, but when I do have it, I like to dedicate it to things that I feel are important in my life or other people's. And if I can put in a little bit of effort to make someone else's life easier, sign me up. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Stairs, for your time. And that concludes questions. We're going to move on to our next presenter. We're moving on to online Dominic Lloyd. If you could turn your camera on, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd, if you could turn your video on, your camera on, that would be great. Okay, great. We can see you now. So you may proceed with your presentation, Mr. Lloyd.
Okay, sorry, there's a dog barking in the background. Thank you all for allowing me the time to speak with you this evening. I apologize that I can't be there in person. I ride an e-scooter. I've been commuting on one for 4 years now, pretty much
Mr. Lloyd, my apologies. We're wondering if you could maybe, if there's a way you could move closer to the microphone, or if there's a way you could maybe speak up. We're having a hard time hearing you right now. Mr. Lloyd.
Please.
That's a good idea. Okay. Okay, Mr. Lloyd, you may begin your presentation. Thank you. Mr. Lloyd, you may begin.
Can you hear and see me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, apologies for that. Sorry, what I was saying after I thanked you for the opportunity to speak and to apologize for not being there in person. I ride an e-scooter I've been commuting on one for about 4 years now, pretty much every weekday between April and November between South Osborne and the Exchange District. And I will echo what the presenters ahead of me have said. I think that we are all in favor of some regulation and some safety. And I think, inclusion of scooters in the Highway Traffic Act will bring them up to date with what I am doing, and I think what the previous presenter is doing, which is wearing helmets, using lights and signals, and exercising our duty of caution as folks who are sharing the road. But I think as I've gone through the legislation or the proposed legislation, there's some discrepancies between different types of personal electric vehicles, which is causes some alarm for me. And I think I don't see that there's been a lot of consultation with folks who ride e-scooters in the creation of this bill. It seems to set out some different rules for scooters and bikes. So that's kind of what I wanted to mention to you today, and the reason why I came. I looked up the consultations that were held, and I believe the Minister Naylor stated that consultations were held with, quote, AM, with the City of Winnipeg, with MPI, Winnipeg Police Services, RCMP, rural law enforcement agencies, a bunch of rental service providers, Peg City Car Co-op, Green Action Center, CAA, Winnipeg Trails, Manitoba Trails, and Bike Winnipeg, unquote. And so, that is a great group of people and a lot of people who have a lot of road knowledge. But what I don't see in there is any sort of concerted effort to include actual users of e-scooters in that group. And that's why I wanted to come and speak to you today. And the previous presenter spoke about speed, and I think he made a really good point about an artificially slow speed limit. Certainly 25 is a very slow speed. And I say that as somebody who rides one regularly with a top speed of 30 kilometers per hour. And it seems like a negligible difference, but it definitely is a difference, the difference between 25 and 30. And I just wonder how many people who were involved in the creation of this bill, and how many people with the power to make this into law have actually been on a scooter and can sort of tell the difference between 25 and 30, or even beyond, which is not somewhere I want to go. But there are, federal regulations that limit scooters to 32 kilometers an hour. So it's obviously something that's been contemplated at some point. And again, I'll defer to the previous presenter for his comments about that sort of artificially low speed limit, particularly if you're putting people into traffic. And just anecdotally to hammer that point home, I use the Fort and Gary Street bike lanes on my scooter, and it is not uncommon for me to be passed at 30K an hour by people who are on road bikes. This was alluded to earlier in the presentations as well, but there is a little bit of a double standard. That 25K an hour speed limit, which is proposed for scooters, does not apply to e-bikes. And I'm curious about why there is a limit proposed for one type of personal electronic vehicle, but not another. We could get into the whole question of different types of speed limits. I know that there is definitely some conversation about lowering residential street speeds, 50 to 40. I own MLA, who I'm normally a big fan of, says he's not in a rush to do that. And I do appreciate Minister Naylor's comments earlier in the media that said, she's willing to look into willing to look at the evidence for lowering those limits, or granting municipalities a blanket ability to lower those limits from 50 to 40. But I think what I'm wondering is, as there is not a pressing eagerness on the part of the government to do that for folks in cars, why is there a pressing eagerness to do it for folks on scooters? And that I think is a little bit of a stumbling block for me. The previous presenter also alluded to minimum ages. I do wonder why the minimum age for e-bikes is 14 and 16 for scooters. I don't understand why that's a discrepancy. I don't understand why e-scooters are limited to streets over 50, but bikes are not. Not that I want to ride on the perimeter on my scooter, but again, I'm not seeing a rationale in the legislation for why those vehicles which are defined under this bill in the same way, why they're being treated differently on those particular questions. And I actually just looked through the bill, and the proposed change, which is to strike out power-assisted bicycle and replace it with personal vehicle. That phrase appears at least 22 times in the materials before you today. And to me, that says that the intent of the legislation is doing bikes the same, except they're not being treated the same in all those respects, and I don't know why that is. So I think what I want to do is just conclude by reiterating the fact that I'm not opposed to regulation, and I think that the presenters here today, all of whom have sort of said the same thing, that there is a need for that, and we do want people to be safe, and we want to be able to use these types of vehicles. I want to pay less for gas, and I want to get home faster, and I don't want to be all sweaty when I get to work. So that's why I choose a scooter, and it's proven a very good way for me to commute. And I think that that by and large, the proposed changes, there's some great stuff in here, but there's also some things that are not actually practical and don't reflect the reality of people who use these vehicles to get from one place to another where they have to be for their jobs and their families and their obligations. And that's about all I need to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm sorry my difficulties were a little bit of a hurdle at the beginning, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to turn it over to the committee for questions, and we'll begin with Minister Naylor.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I appreciate you taking the time to share your perspectives with us tonight. I appreciate, sounds like in general, you're in support of the changes being made to the Highway Traffic Act, but you've also shared some additional context and raised some questions for future consideration. So I really appreciate your engagement on this, and I just want to thank you again for being here.
Mr. Lloyd?
Thank you, Minister Naylor. Just to respond, I would say that there is a community there. It's not a close-knit community, but there are a lot of people out there who are users of these vehicles for a number of reasons. And before putting anything into law, I think it would be really great if those folks could be consulted directly.
Mr. Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Lloyd for your presentation. I don't know where I'm looking. There we go, right here. It's good. Anyways, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Lloyd, and definitely a couple suggestions that I did hear the minister say that she'll take some of these into consideration for future potential thoughts or possibly even amendments. So we'll see in the next few days here what comes of that. So thank you again, Mr. Lloyd, for coming on virtually and using e-bikes. They are fun. Thanks.
Mr. Lloyd, you're welcome to respond.
I'll just say thank you, not only to Mr. Owasco, but to the whole committee for allowing us this opportunity to be heard, and hopefully that all the presenters who've been here tonight will have offered some information that can be taken into consideration to make this ostensibly good legislation even better legislation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lloyd, for your presentation. And that concludes the list of presenters that I have before me. In what order does the committee wish to proceed with clause-by-clause consideration of these bills? Minister Kennedy.
I would propose that we go ahead and do Minister Naylor's bill. Oh. That we go ahead and do Minister Simard, myself, and then Minister Naylor. Thank you.
It has been proposed that the order is Minister Simard, Minister Kennedy, and then Minister Naylor. Does the committee agree? Agreed and so ordered. So 33, I guess. Okay, so we will now proceed with clause by clause of Bill 33. Does the minister responsible for Bill 33 have an opening statement? No. Okay, we thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? MLA King.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And yes, no, I just want to comment on this again as I talked about the first presenter. This is something that municipal officials have been asking for a long time, is some of this type of legislation to give themselves the autonomy and maybe speed up some of the process in the legislation. You know, I always felt that now that I'm a elected provincial official, that at the municipal level, it's much more productive, as it doesn't take quite as long to get things done. But no, I just want to comment on behalf of some of the municipal people out there that they're excited about this legislation, and a little bit of house cleaning here. We just have to continue to work on it and make it better, make it a better bill, and make sure there's some action taken from it. Thank you.
During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed? Shall clause 1 and 2 pass? Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 3 through 8 pass? Clauses 3 through 8 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 9 through 13 pass? Clauses 9 through 13 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 14 through 16 pass? Clauses 14 through 16 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 17 pass? Clause 17 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 18 pass? Clause 18 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 19 through 21 pass? Clauses 19 through 21 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 22 through 25 pass? Clauses 22 through 25 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 26 through 28 pass? Clauses 26 through 28 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 29 through 34 pass? Clauses 29 through 34 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 35 through 38 pass? Clauses 35 through 38 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 39 through 41 pass? Clauses 39 through 41 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 42 through 44 pass? Clauses 42 through 44 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 45 through 47 pass? Clauses 45 through 47 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 48 through 50 pass? Clauses 48 through 50 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 51 and 52 pass? Clauses 51 and 52 are accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. Okay. Now we will move on to Bill 41. Does the minister responsible for Bill 41 have an opening statement?
I do, thank you,
Okay. Honorable Minister Kennedy.
I'm pleased to present Bill 41, the Promoting Inclusion in Amateur Sport Act, to the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs. Bill 41 advances a more inclusive approach to amateur sport by requiring provincial sport organizations to establish an inclusion policy and to make best efforts to improve inclusion and reduce barriers within their programs and activities. Many organizations are already making meaningful efforts in this area, and this legislation acknowledges and builds upon that existing work. We recognize that progress has not been consistent across the sport system, and this legislation will assist with that. While some provincial sport organizations have strong policies and initiatives in place, others face challenges related to capacity, direction, or consistency, which can limit their ability to fully address barriers to participation. This bill establishes a clear and consistent framework for inclusion across amateur sport. It moves inclusion beyond an optional practice to a shared and sustained responsibility, providing stability that endures beyond changes in leadership or governance. In doing so, it helps to ensure that inclusion remains a priority over the long term. Bill 41 respects the important work already underway and strengthens it by introducing greater clarity, consistency, and accountability. This bill is about ensuring that everyone in Manitoba who wishes to take part in amateur sport has a genuine opportunity to do so, and that our sport system reflects the diversity and values of our province. Thank you.
We thank the Minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to thank the Minister and the Department for bringing forward the for Bill 41. And I would like to talk about that the bill does recognize the reality, and it sets out to create a framework that promotes inclusion and encourages greater participation. It places responsibility on provincial sport organizations under the leadership of Sport Manitoba to take deliberate and measurable steps toward inclusion. There's much in this legislation that is worth supporting, and the requirement for a province-wide inclusion policy is an important step. For too long, inclusion efforts have been uneven, dependent on the priorities and the resources of individual organizations. A standardized policy creates a shared foundation. It signals that inclusion is not optional, it is expected. Equally important is the emphasis on education. Requiring board members and staff to complete inclusion training acknowledges that meaningful change begins with awareness and understanding. Policies alone are not enough. People must have the tools and knowledge to implement them effectively. The introduction of participant assessments is another notable feature of this bill. For the first time, organizations will be required to collect demographic information to better understand who's participating in their sports and, just as importantly, who is not. This part, through some of the presenters from today, will be interesting how we continue to move this bill forward. This data has the potential to drive more informed decision-making and targeted initiatives, even though, in addition to that, a lot of the presenters, or a couple of the presenters, had pointed out a couple potential flaws. Finally, the annual reporting requirement introduces a measure of accountability. Organizations will not only need to act, but also to reflect on and evaluate the impact of their actions. Taken together, these elements represent a thoughtful attempt to move from aspiration to action. However, while the intent of this bill is commendable, its success will depend on how it addresses several important challenges. First, there's a question of clarity. The bill refers repeatedly to, and I quote, underrepresented groups, yet it does not define who these groups are. Without a clear and consistent definition, there is a risk that organizations will interpret this term. If we are serious about inclusion, we must also be clear about who we are trying to include. There's also the issue of capacity. Not all provincial sport organizations are created equal. Some are large, well-funded, and professionally staffed. Others rely heavily on volunteers and operate with limited resources, as, again, our presenter had brought that forward. Without adequate support, smaller organizations may struggle to comply. This could lead to unintended consequences, including reduced programming or increased administration burden on the volunteers. Organizations, sport bodies must have the tools, funding, and support they need to meet these expectations. We must also consider privacy. Very important in today's day and age, of course, and we've seen many different pieces of legislation that has come forward from the current government, and also just some mishaps within various different organizations throughout our province. And I think, this day and age, things and using technology and everything else is moving at a hugely rapid pace. And so we definitely have to be mindful of all of that. Then, of course, there's the question of enforcement. The bill establishes a number of requirements, but is less clear about the consequences of failing to meet them. Without meaningful enforcement mechanisms, there is a risk that compliance will be uneven. Will organizations face penalties for non-compliance? Will funding be tied to adherence? These are important questions that remain unanswered, but I have some faith that there's going to be some potential thoughts coming from the minister on this bill, and again, it's a good piece of legislation. The intent is definitely there, but I do think that there's a few points that definitely could strengthen this bill. And with that, Mr. Chair, I thank you for allowing me to say a few words.
During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed? Shall Clause 1 pass? Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 2 through 5 pass? Clauses 2 through 5 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 6 through 9 pass? Clauses 6 through 9 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 10 through 12 pass? Clauses 10 through 12 are accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. We are now moving on to Bill 43. And does the minister responsible... Oh. I would like to inform the committee that under our rule 84(2), the following membership substitution has been made for this committee effective immediately. Honourable Minister Naylor for Honourable Minister Simard. Thank you. Does the minister responsible for Bill 43 have an opening statement?
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
Minister Naylor.
Good evening, Chairperson, members of the committee, and registered presenters. If any of you are still online, I'm very pleased to be here to discuss Bill 43, the Highway Traffic Amendment and Driver and Vehicles Amendment Act. This bill amends the Highway Traffic Act and the Driver and Vehicles Act to introduce 2 new vehicle classifications for personal electrical vehicles, such as e-scooters and 3-wheeled vehicles, along with rules for their use on roads. Additional amendments will restrict the level of automated driver assistant features that may be used on Manitoba roadways and require overweight and over-dimensional vehicles and trailers operating under special permits to be registered and plated. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of those who provided input and support for this bill, and I look forward to consideration of this important legislation by the committee. And I again want to thank all the participants who came out tonight to take part in the committee process.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? MLA King.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. And yeah, I just want to thank the minister for bringing forward this legislation. There's some good proposals in here, and the presenters that we heard earlier tonight. I think it's important that we listen to a couple of good points that they made there. I think one was stressed was maybe the too low of a speed limit, and the other one I think was the enforcement of it and the training of municipalities are going to want to know, how that enforcement will be implemented, and how, you know, who it's going to be, what training will be available for the enforcement officers and the to enforce these. So I just want to make that point and put it on record that it gets attended to, that some attention is given to those points. This committee is an opportunity for Manitobans to show their support or their opposition to it, and tonight we didn't see a whole lot of opposition to it, but some great support and some great points brought forward that we could work towards making the legislation better. So, thank you.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses and blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay. Shall clauses 1 and 2 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 3 pass?
Pass.
Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 4 through 9 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 4 through 9 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 10 and 11 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 10 and 11 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 12 pass?
Pass.
Clause 12 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 13 pass?
Pass.
Clause 13 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 14 and 15 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 14 and 15 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 16 and 17 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 16 and 17 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 18 pass?
Pass.
Clause 18 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 19 through 22 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 19 through 22 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 23 through 25 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 23 through 25 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 26 through 28 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 26 through 28 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 29 and 30 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 29 and 30 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 31 through 34 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 31 through 34 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 35 through 37 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 35 through 37 are accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed. The bill shall be reported. Okay, the hour being 8:04. What is the will of the committee?
Rise.
Committee rise.
Thank you. Thank you for chairing.